The honourable member for Vancouver East has a point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise in this House to raise a point of order. I believe that Bill C-97 is an omnibus bill as defined under Standing Order 69-1. I and my NDP colleagues are deeply concerned at this government's reliance on omnibus bills to ram its priorities through in this place, often also attempting to conceal measures from Canadians. We firmly believe that this practice is inherently undemocratic and requests you to intervene. Standing Order 69-1 states, and I quote, "In the case where a government bill seeks to repeal, amend, or enact more than one act, and where there is not a common element connecting the various provisions, or where unrelated matters are linked, the Speaker shall have the power to divide the questions for the purposes of voting and on the motions for second reading and reference to a committee and the motion for third reading and passage of the bill. The Speaker shall have the power to combine clauses of the bill thematically and to put the aforementioned questions on each of these groups of clauses separately, provided that there will be a single debate at each stage." Page 730 of the third edition of the House of Commons Procedures and Practices state, quote, "In general, an omnibus bill seeks to amend, repeal, or enact several acts and is characterized by the fact that it is made up of a number of related but separate initiatives. To render an omnibus bill intelligible for parliamentary purposes, the Speaker has previously ruled that such a bill should have one basic principle or purpose which ties together all the proposed enactments. Given this definition, it is plainly obvious to me that Bill C-97, with over 350 pages and several standalone pieces of legislation inside, is an omnibus bill. I strongly believe that Canadians at home would agree. I would imagine that they would also like us as their representatives in this place to properly study and debate these separate pieces of legislation as such. However, it is clear that once again the Liberals are using the loophole that they added to the standing orders in order to include many unrelated measures. Standing Order 69-1-2, which states, quote, "The present standing order shall not apply if the bill has its main purpose the implementation of a budget and contains only provisions that were announced in the budget presentation or in the documents tabled during budget presentation." While we've had limited time to sort through this mess of a Budget Implementation Act, we have already found several provisions contained in Bill C-97 that were not announced on March 19th. 1. Subsection B of Division 9 of Part 4 amends the Electricity and Gas Inspection Act. 2. Subsection D of Division 9 of Part 4 amends the Importation of Intoxicating Liquors Act. 3. Subsection E of Division 9 of Part 4 amends the Precious Metals Making Act. 4. Subsection F of Division 9 of Part 4 amends the Textile Labeling Act. 5. Subsection G of Division 9 of Part 4 amends the Weights and Measures Act. 6. Subsection J of Division 9 of Part 4 amends the Pest Control Products Act. 7. Subsection K of Division 9 of Part 4 repeals the provisions of the Quarantine Act. 8. Subsection L of Division 9 of Part 4 repeals the provisions of the Human Pathogens and Toxins Act. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, I'm simply disheartened by the Liberal government's attempt to hide within the Budget Bill Implementation Act two pieces of standalone legislation that will significantly transform the Canadian immigration system. First, Part 4, Division 15, Section 192 to 302 creates the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants Act. Now, Mr. Speaker, as you know, this issue was studied by the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration, which produced the only unanimous supported report in that committee of this Parliament, which called for urgent action and was concurred in this House on December 4th, 2017. The government responded to that study, was presented to the House in October 2017, where the minister stated, quote, "The minister expects to be able to provide more information on the way forward next year." Well, Mr. Speaker, the minister missed his own self-imposed deadline and is now forced to hide these changes within the Budget Implementation Act. Given the significance of this standalone piece of legislation, I and my colleagues strongly believe that this 45-page act must be separated out of Bill C-97 so that it can be debated, studied, amended, and voted on as the separate legislation that it is. Second, and even more alarming, is this Liberal government's attempt to hide its efforts to shut down the Canadian border to asylum seekers in the midst of a global refugee crisis. Part 4, Division 16, Sections 302 to 311 make dramatic changes to the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. These changes would render ineligible potentially thousands of individuals seeking asylum from even having their claim heard by the Immigration and Refugee Board. This is an ongoing court case challenging the constitutionality of the Safe Third Country Agreement, and it appears that this government is looking to legislation around this lawsuit expand the agreement to include countries that Canada has an information sharing agreement with and codify into the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. To quote a refugee lawyer that has contacted me already on these changes, the substance here is disappointing, but the fact that such significant change is being introduced in this way without consultation, without notice, is what's even worse. At least Harper and Jason Kenney, and this is something straight out of their kitchen, would have had the courage to stand behind it. Mr. Speaker, this would be a grave injustice to some of the most vulnerable groups in the world, an abdication of our duty under international law to simply slide this legislation through Bill C-97. We, as parliamentarians, have the duty to separate out this piece of legislation in Bill C-97 as well, so that its impacts can be truly examined and debated in this place. We must have the opportunity to debate in this place if it is truly the direction that the Canadian government wants to take. Mr. Speaker, by throwing to elements which were not announced in the budget presentation and by hiding significant standalone legislation that would have far-reaching impacts on Canada's immigration system, I submit that this bill meets the standards set out in standing orders to be treated as an omnibus bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I look forward to your response.
I'll take the recommendation under advisement and return to the chamber in due course.